Have you ever wondered why some people command so much presence without needing to say a single word? They don't chase, they don't over-explain, they don't force. They simply pull back, and suddenly the whole room changes. People start feeling their absence more than they ever noticed their presence. There's no drama, no warning, just space. And in that space, everything shifts. What if you stopped answering right away? What if you stopped trying to be everywhere for everyone all the time? What would happen if you chose silence over reaction, stillness over explanation? Here's the truth. Most people don't fear losing you. They fear losing control over you. They rely on your availability, your emotional reactions, your predictable need to respond. But the second you change that pattern, the second you pull back with intention, they panic. They start poking, provoking, trying to get a rise out of you. Why? Because your distance disrupts the illusion they had of who you are. Suddenly, they're not dealing with the version of you they could control. They're facing a mystery. And that mystery, it's powerful. It reveals more about them than it ever did about you. The way someone reacts when you set a boundary says everything. Those who were there to use your energy will fall away. Those who were never really with you will show their true colors. Every time you say yes to keep peace, you pay for it with your emotional energy. And eventually, all that people-pleasing leaves you with nothing but quiet frustration and a vague sense of emptiness you can't explain. But here's where the shift begins. This isn't about becoming distant. It's about becoming deliberate. Choosing yourself. Stepping into what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, real, and untouchable. You're not reacting from pain anymore. You're acting from awareness. You're no longer begging to be seen. You're choosing to be respected. And when you stop being always available, that's when you finally become unforgettable. 1. The trap of availability. He was always the first to respond, to help, to say yes. And at first, it felt noble. But over time, he noticed something strange. The more available he was, the less people respected him. They didn't thank him. They expected him. This is the quiet trap of always being there. When you're always accessible, people stop seeing you as a person and start using you as a tool. They know your boundaries are soft, so they push without guilt. Your presence becomes their crutch. You answer every message, show up for every crisis, and slowly your emotional energy fades without you noticing. It's not that they're evil, it's just how people operate. If you don't define where you end and they begin, they'll assume you don't mind being crossed. And so, your self-worth becomes a transaction. The more you give, the less you're valued. Think about that friend who only calls when they need something, the colleague who always asks for favors but disappears when you need help. These patterns exist because you've trained them to believe you'll always say yes. Boundaries. Forgotten. Individuation. Delayed. All because you thought being kind meant being endlessly available. But here's the pivot point. The moment you become less accessible, the world around you gets uncomfortable. That discomfort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're finally taking your energy back. And once you reclaim that space, you'll begin to notice the hidden cost of every yes you never questioned. 2. The hidden cost of saying yes. There's a deep exhaustion that doesn't come from overwork, but from self-betrayal. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're not just being agreeable, you're chipping away at your emotional energy. It's subtle at first. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, but over time, those small sacrifices stack up like bricks on your chest, and the weight doesn't go away. It settles in your spirit. Think of how many times you've agreed to go somewhere you didn't want to be, just to keep the peace. You smiled when you wanted silence. You responded to texts when all you craved was stillness. These aren't harmless habits. They're signals that you're trading your own self-worth for temporary approval. And approval that's bought with energy you don't have is never real. It's survival. The world won't ask if you're okay while you're constantly giving. It will keep taking. People don't usually notice when your tank is empty, especially if you're the one who taught them they could always rely on you. You're not a villain for feeling tired. You're just human. And humans need boundaries. They need space to breathe, to rest, to reconnect with their own center. So here's the hard truth. No one is coming to save your energy for you. You have to do it yourself. And it starts with the courage to pause, to hesitate before saying yes, to ask yourself, is this choice feeding me or draining me? That question alone is a form of individuation, of learning that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. 3. Scarcity creates value. We've been conditioned to think that being available means being loving, loyal, reliable. But what if that constant availability is exactly why people stop valuing you? When something is always within reach, it loses its impact. It becomes part of the background noise. Your presence becomes expected instead of appreciated, and people begin to treat it like a utility instead of a gift. Look at how we treat rare things. A rare whiskey is savored. A rare sunrise is photographed. But the friend who always answers? Taken for granted. It's not because they're ungrateful, it's because the abundance of you has numbed them to your value. Scarcity isn't rejection, it's an act of clarity. It's how you teach people to recognize your worth through your absence, not just your presence. Start small. Don't answer every message right away. Let some calls go to voicemail. Cancel plans when your energy is low. You're not disappearing. You're shifting the dynamic. You're moving from being accessible by default to being intentional with your energy. This isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming self-worth in a world that rewards self-abandonment. And something magical happens when you pull back. People begin to lean in. Not everyone, of course, but the right ones. The ones who see your boundaries not as walls, but as the outline of your true shape. This is where individuation deepens, where you stop being a product of other people's needs and start becoming a person defined by your own presence. 4. Your reactions are their playground. When you react instantly, people know exactly where to poke, push, and prod. And once they figure out your emotional buttons, they stop respecting your boundaries and start using your impulses. You might think you're making decisions freely, but most of your reactions are actually pre-programmed. You're not responding from awareness, you're reacting from habit. Imagine someone knowing they can control your whole mood with a single comment. That's not connection, it's manipulation. And the scariest part, most people don't even realize it's happening. They think they're just being responsive or kind, when in reality they're dancing to a rhythm someone else is playing. This constant emotional reactivity drains your emotional energy and leaves your self-worth dangling by a thread. To break free from this, you need to start interrupting the pattern. That means inserting a pause where you used to insert a reaction. Someone makes a snarky comment? Don't explain, don't defend, don't respond right away, just breathe. That pause is power. That silence is the doorway back to yourself. Individuation begins when you stop letting people script your emotional responses. Because when you stop reacting like a puppet, people lose control over the strings. And that's when the discomfort begins, for them. But for you, that's where sovereignty starts. That's when you realize you don't have to be predictable to be powerful. You don't have to be reactive to be respected. And it all begins with the pause. 5. The power of conscious silence. Silence is not the absence of response, it's the presence of control. It's the moment you realize you don't owe anyone an explanation, and you don't have to defend your peace. People often mistake silence for weakness, but the ones who truly understand energy know it's the loudest thing in the room. When you choose not to engage, you conserve emotional energy and protect your self-worth without saying a word. Conscious silence isn't passive. It's active self-regulation. It means you've learned to sit with discomfort instead of reacting to it. For example, the next time someone tries to provoke you, notice the urge to respond. And don't. Feel it rise, feel it tighten your chest, and then let it pass. That decision not to speak is a boundary in motion. It's not avoidance, it's strength under pressure. In practice, this might look like stepping out of an argument, turning off your phone for an evening, or simply refusing to play emotional ping-pong with someone who thrives on conflict. These actions aren't about ego. They're about individuation, about creating enough space between stimulus and response so you can actually choose who you want to be. And here's the unexpected twist. Silence doesn't just protect your peace, it exposes the intentions of others. When you stop reacting, the real motives start to show. People reveal themselves not in your presence, but in how they behave when you refuse to be a character in their drama. And that's where your next level of awareness begins. 6. Shattering the mask of projection. Most people aren't relating to who you are. They're relating to who they need you to be. They project their unmet needs, their pain, and their expectations onto you like a mask. And the more available you are, the more you become the perfect screen for that projection. But the second you shift, withdraw, or act differently, that illusion cracks, and it shocks them. Ever notice how someone gets upset when you start setting boundaries, even though you've always been nice? It's not that you've changed, it's that their image of you no longer works. And they don't know how to handle the real you, only the version that served their comfort. That's the danger of over-accommodating. You lose your self-worth trying to keep their image intact. When you begin to remove the projection, things get weird. You may be called distant, arrogant, cold, but those labels don't describe you. They describe their confusion. You've stopped being a mirror for their needs and started becoming a reflection of your own truth. And that's where individuation takes root. It's the point where you stop being their fantasy and start being your reality. If this feels lonely, it's because it is, at first. But don't mistake that solitude for a mistake. It's clarity. Because what remains after the projections fall away? The ones who actually see you, the ones who stay without needing you to shrink, bend, or pretend. And that's when the next lesson about being needed versus being loved really starts to surface. 7. Being needed is not being loved. There's a dangerous lie that many carry from childhood. The idea that being useful equals being worthy. So we become the fixers, the rescuers, the emotional emergency line for everyone around us. At first, it feels like love, but slowly, it reveals itself for what it is, emotional dependency disguised as connection. And that dependency isn't about you, it's about the comfort you provide. Someone always needs you to cheer them up, solve their drama, listen to their problems. But the moment you stop being useful, they pull away. That's not love, that's convenience. Love doesn't demand your exhaustion. It doesn't ask for your presence while ignoring your boundaries. Being needed feeds the ego. Being loved feeds the soul. The difference? One drains you. The other honors your self-worth. Start observing the people around you. Who checks in on you? Who values your silence as much as your support? Who listens without expecting you to fix them? These small signs tell you whether you're in a relationship built on mutual care or one that survives on imbalance. And once you see the truth, it's hard to unsee. That's when the desire to please starts to feel like self-betrayal. And this is where your journey gets more real. You start pulling back, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. You begin to rebuild your emotional energy, piece by piece. You stop proving your worth through what you do for others and start remembering who you are without playing a role. That remembering takes time, it takes space, and that leads to something even deeper, the sacred retreat. 8. The sacred retreat. Stepping back doesn't mean giving up. It means coming home to yourself. Carl Jung called it individuation. the process of becoming whole by peeling away everything you're not. But you can't do that while caught in the noise of everyone else's expectations. Sometimes silence isn't just healing, it's necessary. It's where you hear the voice you've been drowning out, your own. The sacred retreat doesn't require a mountaintop or a monastery. It can happen in your living room with your phone on airplane mode. It can be a walk without your headphones or a night alone with a journal. The point isn't isolation, it's integration. You're not running from the world. You're gathering your scattered pieces and remembering your shape outside the masks you've worn. And here's the catch. Most people won't understand. They'll think you're avoiding them, that you're being selfish, but that's okay. They don't need to understand your healing. Your retreat is not a performance, it's a reclamation. It's where your self-worth gets rewired, your emotional energy gets restored, and your boundaries stop being flexible out of guilt. In that sacred space, things become clear. You start noticing what actually matters to you, what energizes you, and what no longer fits. You see where you've been pouring yourself into cracked cups, and in that clarity, you begin to shift, not back toward others, but deeper into your own center. And as that center strengthens, the guilt starts to fade, until the only thing left to face is the subtle weapon of control called guilt. 9. Guilt is the ego's last weapon. The moment you begin to set boundaries, guilt shows up like an uninvited guest. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your ego hates change. It's been trained to believe that self-worth is earned through sacrifice, through being agreeable, through saying yes even when everything inside you screams no. So when you finally say no, guilt creeps in to keep the old pattern alive. You start questioning yourself. Am I being too harsh? Am I pushing people away? That voice isn't wisdom, it's programming. It's the echo of years spent people-pleasing, performing for love instead of receiving it freely. And here's the twist. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will be the first to guilt-trip you when you finally protect your energy. It's not because you're wrong, it's because they're losing control. Recognize this for what it is. Ego preservation, yours and theirs. Your ego wants to keep the peace, maintain the persona, stay predictable. Their ego wants you back in the old role where you were easy to access and easy to manipulate. But when you hold the boundary, even with shaky hands, you begin to shift from people-pleasing to individuation. That's when the old roles begin to crumble, and in the space that guilt used to fill, you begin to feel something new, power, not force, not pride, but a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need approval to exist, the kind that allows you to feel misunderstood without falling apart. Because what comes after guilt isn't more conflict, it's clarity, the kind that can only emerge in the stillness of solitude. 10. The rebirth in solitude. At first, the silence feels like a loss. You're no longer the go-to person. The phone doesn't ring as much. The invitations slow down. And yet, in that uncomfortable quiet, something incredible begins to happen. The absence of noise reveals your real voice. You start to notice how much of your life was spent reacting, adjusting, performing. And for what? Approval, belonging, survival. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's presence without performance. It's where emotional energy stops leaking into people who didn't value it. It's where your self-worth stops being a public poll and starts becoming an inner knowing. You sit with your thoughts, your patterns, your truths, and they're raw at first. But eventually, they stop shouting, they start guiding. This is where rebirth begins. You're not rebuilding a version of yourself that pleases others. You're remembering the version of you that never needed their permission. You stop chasing roles. You stop seeking validation. You realize you're enough, even when no one is clapping, and that's a kind of power that doesn't scream, it radiates. It fills the room before you speak. People will say you've changed. They'll feel uncomfortable around your calm, but that discomfort isn't your problem to fix. It's the echo of their unhealed parts reacting to your peace. Let it be. You're not here to be understood by everyone, you're here to become whole. And once you touch that level of wholeness, the next question isn't about returning to the old you. It's about what life becomes from this new center.